Hello and welcome to the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast, proudly sponsored by the Facebook group with the same name, the No Holds Barred Witchcraft Facebook group. Now, if you have been on Facebook for any amount of time, you'll probably notice that there's an awful lot of witchcraft groups, pagan groups, occult groups, and they all seem to be full of fuckwits that often post memes and don't really talk about anything. On the rare occasion they do talk about magical practice, is normally that they've just copy and pasted reams from a book, and it's not their own words. It's what I like to call, Chris, borrowed words, right? Which is something that we'll be kind of talking about today. But I can assure you that most of the posts in the No Holds Barred Witchcraft Facebook group aren't borrowed words. They're people actually share a magical practice. So if you want to join the No Holds Barred Witchcraft Facebook group, then go ahead, search for it in Facebook, click the little join button and fill out the questions. Most of the questions just involve you saying that you are ready to be insulted. So just say yes to all of them and you'll be fine. And yes, you probably will be insulted if you post stupid crap. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's what our toxic little community is all about, isn't it? Progression, pressure makes diamonds, Chris, doesn't it?
It does. It makes diamonds.
So, you've been irked, haven't you? You've been irked.
It's a reoccurring theme that happens every now and again. It's rare that it happens in our group, but it does happen there too, which is people get really excited about their projects and then they present their project. And then you're kind of like, okay, well, do you speak Aramaic or do you speak Hebrew? And they kind of go, no. So, well, why are those languages on your tools then, or in as part of the working then?
I know the answer to that, Chris. It's because they're words of power, Chris.
And the book told them how to, yeah?
I think that it's a little bit like this series I watched, right? Called Blue Mountain State. I don't know if you've ever watched it. And they've got this certain toy that gets passed around the lads in the locker room. And Words of Power very much reminds me of this little toy. Okay. And I suppose people think that because it's been used by so many people, that it somehow retains a certain amount of energy and stuff. But if the case, then why are so many people obsessed with virgins?
Of course you went there. But yes, why are we after purity? God knows. Yeah, what gets at me is all the excuses are, well, these are words of power. These are words that have been passed down through the millennia. And you kind of like, passed down by who? Because I'm pretty sure most of the written words, unless you're pulling tablets out of your arse that I've never seen, are words that have been written from translation to translation to translation, starting in the Renaissance.
Well, the words are modern ancient, aren't they? You know, like that modern ancient Egyptian that we're fans of.
Yeah.
And the modern ancient pronunciation of certain cuneiform scripts and such is modern ancient because it is like the ancient, but it's not ancient because someone's made up in modern times an academic. So this is how it sounded, or it sounded something like this. I know this because I got reasons for it. Have you been there? Well, no, I've never been there. Okay, have you got recordings? Well, no, I haven't got recordings, but it must have sounded like that because of something to do with Coptic.
Yeah.
Or something to do with this, or something to do with that. I'm not going to shit on the academics because we do that enough as it is. Instead, I think we should spend our time shitting on Pleb Magic. Okay, Pleb Magic is this thing that you see in a lot of books to do with cunning folk. and a lot of this sort of thing, which is the idea that, oh, this is magical. I'm going to use it. Okay, do you know the origins of it? Well, the book says it's got something to do with this or that. And it must be good because plebs use it. And this is what I mean by pleb. I mean the superstitious type. Like that song, very superstitious. Yeah. These people are what we consider to be a lot of the people that make up the traditional witchcraft groups. These superstitious people, which actually, at some point, and I'm not entirely sure when, I'm presuming it was something along the lines of when Troy Books was founded, but around about this sort of time, you know, all that random shit your grandma used to come out with? Well, at some point that started to become cool. At some point that suddenly became the creme de la creme of magical practice. The shit your grandma used to go on about. Don't cross on the stairs. All of that stuff where they
crazy
say,
one that drinks too much brandy.
Yeah, all of this crazy ass stuff that people used to say it works but can't tell you how it works.
Yeah.
All of that stuff, that's suddenly all of a sudden is very in, Chris. It's very in, you see. And we've got to keep up with the times, Chris. So, do you feel we're keeping up with the times?
I would like to think that we are.
Yeah, we're very with it, aren't we?
I think we're aware of shit that hasn't gone down yet. And this seems to be the problem with it, is the focus
so you think we're ahead of the times? Like the great people of the age, you know, Einstein, Da Vinci, all of these people ahead of their time. You're thinking we're a bit too ahead of our time. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
Okay.
But I'm of the feeling often that we were here to try and correct some of this stuff. Because otherwise, why would we ever put this date in our time machines, in it? Like, why would we come to this shithole at this time if there wasn't going to be some purpose to the stuff we're going to be spewing for the next 30 years? Like, do you know?
Well, I presume it was for comedy, wasn't it?
Oh, okay. We just came here to take the piss. Is that what you're saying?
This is like the play that goes wrong. It's a comedy of errors, you see.
Okay.
I mean, some would say that this entire podcast is all about us taking the piss out of other people's magical practice with never really giving any of our own away. But I would say that those people need to learn to read between the lines.
Yes.
They've learned to read.
Open their ears.
But they haven't quite managed to get to the learning between the lines part. I'm not sure how far down the little Magic Key Adventure series of books you need to get before you start learning how to read between the lines. It might be a Biff and Chip Adventure 1600 something. I don't know. Did you have Biff and Chip at school?
Of course.
Oh.
That's all
our
over
American
the UK.
friends probably won't have a clue what we're talking about.
No,
but
I'm sure they have no idea. But
sure
maybe they had American Adventures too. Maybe they got
did.
About.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to Google that when we leave. Yeah, I think what really gets at me is people that don't want to do the work of the translation because they think, well, someone else has translated it. Like they do when they read a website because they've clicked the Google Translate button that translates the page. And you do realize that's an algorithm. And they do get things wrong occasionally because they can't read nuance. That is exactly what you're talking about when somebody who wasn't of the time decides to back translate something several thousand years later. And they don't seem to get that those people aren't witches, for starters, so can't actually understand the concept they're trying to translate, and therefore have just coughed up some words.
I think you're being overly nice because you're talking about people potentially contemplating, translating and working into their own practice, whereas I see copy and paste I see copy and paste, and I see copy and paste as I don't know how it works, and I ain't got a clue how it works, and I don't care how it works. All I want it to do is work, and apparently the book says this works because loads of other people are doing it. And as we all know in the playground, there's safety in numbers. And as we all know in the playground, you just got to copy the other person, haven't you? Don't innovate, don't truly learn, just copy the other person. Because if they're wrong, you're also wrong. And luckily, this is now how we've managed to get away with making that out to the rest of the world that magic don't really exist. So we have to congratulate and thank you idiots out there that do this copy and paste magic, that do read from the book, expecting something to happen, when in reality, they don't understand how to read from the book, nor that understand what the book is. And they're probably holding the book upside down. If it wasn't for the page numbers, I would say a lot of people that try to use these charms in ancient languages wouldn't know which way up the text is supposed to be. And these are the same people very often that ask me, do you read reversals on tarot? What do the reversals mean? Do I have to read reversals on the tarot? You know, it's just because I really worry because, you know, my name's Karen and I have nothing better to worry about, so I have to invent things to worry about. And I was flipping through my cards, which I do twice a year, and one fell out, and it fell out upside down, and I want to know what that means. I want to know, because it was upside down, whether I need to read or can I put out the right way. Well, Karen, I think if you are listening, you need to get the fuck off of this podcast and go and listen to one of the lesser witchcraft podcasts that is probably more at your reading age level, I suppose. Because you ain't going to get
probably that are still reading the tarot book that comes with them.
Yeah.
That one probably. But yes, the Karens of the world do keep us safe, Liam. You are correct.
They do.
They do keep us safe. Because God forbid anybody actually took us seriously and realised what we're capable of doing. Luckily, we don't care enough to fuck around with the shit we could fuck around with.
It's because it's no fun. I mean, you know, crushing ants isn't fun, is it?
It's boring.
All these people that go hunting, they don't go hunting for ants. They go hunting for like lions and crap, don't they? Yeah. Because they feel like, you know, they put up more of a fight, more of a, you know.
But we're proper hunters. We wouldn't go on safari to do it.
No.
We'd be dropped out of an aeroplane to go live rough it. Well, you would. I'd be having them delivered to a 20-star restaurant instead.
By foreign dignitaries trying to win your favour.
Yeah.
Oh, the good old days.
Oh, I miss the good old days. Again, why did we come back to this shithole, Liam?
Well, only you can answer that. I've got something to do with hashtag soul contracts on it. Or maybe the TARDIS malfunctions that it does every other episode.
Maybe. It does every now and again.
It does seem to do it recently. Now a woman's driving. Oh, I said something misogynistic.
That's awful. You can't say shit like that, Liam.
I can't say shit like that.
Shit like that no more.
I can't say shit like that. This is the sort of shit that tends to go on the Patreon, the extended edition of the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. And I only said it because I thought that it might upset people. I don't actually believe it. But I do like to say things to stir the pot.
It's almost as bad when you talk about that quilted room for the remedial lot. You can't say those sorts of things
quilt
anymore.
Room. I was one of the remedial lot in the patchwork quilt room, so I'm allowed to talk about it. Because that's how comedy used to work. You had a free pass to make jokes of something if those jokes concerned you. So, like, fat people can make fat people jokes, you know. Gay people can make gay people jokes, and so on and so forth. Apparently, that's in a bit of a grey area now, isn't it? Because nowadays you're just not allowed to offend. But whether you're aware you're offending someone or whether you set out to offend someone's besides the point. In fact, there are our American friends that won't know this, but there are laws that have been passed in the UK and legislations and stuff that means that you can get yourself into some very iffy trouble for saying something to someone and then certain things happen outside of the court of law, but I'm not going to give my enemies ammunition. So if you want to know about that, then ask me on one of the witchcraft consultations, and I'll tell you. There's a fascinating case I was made aware of fairly recently. And I did think maybe I should use this on my enemies, but then I thought, actually, I personally would not stoop to such a level.
Oh dear. Right,
There
what
we
was
go.
the actual point of this? We were talking
Well,
about words of power
there's
and
a
shit,
couple of
weren't we?
things. We were supposed to be talking about sigils and sigil magic.
Yeah.
And then also we were supposed to be talking a little bit about words of power and this idea of pleb magic, because there are a number of highly respected magical practitioners that utilize this pleb magic. They utilize these symbols, words, other such things that have been used for a long time and that they do sense to retain a certain amount of energy. And I personally have to come out and say, I very much have always looked down on this practice. Now, I've taught this practice from a theoretical perspective, and I've set homework to do with this practice to people so that they learn the limitations of said practice. Because
But
if
you as
you're
the modern day
relying...
cunning man, Liam.
Oh no, let's not mention the Cunningham man. Come on. Because there's this thing, obviously, with this idea of attaching energy to your spell work and stuff like that. The first thing we need to establish is that a lot of spell work is basic ass crap. And when you've mastered the basic ass crap and you start doing serious big spells, you know, multi-leveled, multi-layered, all that kind of thing, spells that can actually, like an artificial intelligence autopilot on an airplane, pilot the airplane, those sorts of spells that can overcome obstacles and organically switch direction as needed. Those are slightly more advanced spells, but even so, that's still spell work, and as we all know, spell work is beginner. Spell work doesn't go past the beginner stage. So
no, you won't get to know him intermediary shit with that.
But the most beginner of beginner, aside from this candle magic lark, which most people can't seem to get to work, and you can see why, is this idea of borrowing words of power, iconography, and all that, and jamming it all together. And a lot of people confuse that with sigil magic, and they think I need to jam as much stuff that the correspondences in the book say is related to protection and just paint it on my wall, on my jewelry, tattoo it on me and stick it all around the house, and then I'm somehow going to be protected. And I'm seeing a lot of people do this. There's this very good, I like it, but I have to say it does sum the point up. There's a certain YouTube channel, which I think we both like, that does this, that talks about this. And I think, honey, anyone with half a clue, and I don't mean a full clue, I mean half a clue, would be able to get around that. So what is the point of you utilizing that as a serious form of protection, right? A serious form of protection. It is the equivalent of putting on your door, you know, the people that say dog lives here or keep out or something like that. It's like, no one listens to that. No one pays any attention to that whatsoever. And the people that are robbing you and casing the joint know you haven't got a dog. Anyway, so that all that does is make your front door and gate look more tacky than it already is.
Yeah.
And I know the engine machine parts and the washing machine drum and various other children's toys and vodka bottles sticking outside of your recycling bin because you drink so much that you can't actually fit them all in the recycling bin, all scattered around your front garden is enough, you know, to make the place look trashy. But you don't put one of those beware of the dog maker to scare people off when you're not. But there we go. There's very much magic in that because you can equate that to a lot of magical practitioners, and I can understand to a certain extent. I will say this: I've seen how much people struggle to get started on a magical path, but those that know better should know better. Okay, they really should know better at this point, particularly when they've gone through an entire video series that explains how to do such things and still make the same mistakes. And I have to wonder sometimes why people make those mistakes, Chris.
I think part of it is the level of people that are putting content out there are often still got the stabilizers on themselves. So
Oh,
you've
yeah.
got these people who, oh, you only need to be one step ahead of the student you're teaching. Those kind of people who think that actually, if you're still reading from a book, as long as you're a few pages ahead of the person you're teaching, you're fine. You know, God forbid anyone actually had any practice or experience underneath their belt before they started spouting shit on the internet. But anyway, and correspondences and all that bollocks. I think what's important is, and which is what made me want to have this kind of rant in the first place, was kind of people's responses to something you said in one of our Sigil Magic things.
Oh God, what have I said now?
Where you just took no, it's not a bad thing. I just don't think people actually follow through and actually listen to what you've said. You know, going back to the reading between the lines stuff, where you will have mentioned, don't forget, there are lots of universal symbols out there. Obviously, that wouldn't have probably been the way you said it, and I can't remember which way you did, but you'd have said what you'd have actually meant is that there are lots of universal symbols in these book of symbol larks. And let's face it, a lot of these manuscripts that people think they've read from the translation on Google are essentially just that. They are books of symbols that are there to remind the practitioner who wrote the book what they were doing at the time. Because let's face it, when you're an actual practice, a practitioner who actually has a practice, you kind of have to create a shorthand because you're so busy doing the practice that you're not really going to want to write shit down other than to say, remind, must buy eggs. Because if you don't write it down, you're not going to remember to go and do it. And people don't seem to get that a lot of these grimoires are exactly that. They are the bits of information that you needed to remember because the rest of it is already stored in your head. And essentially, that's what a lot of these symbols in sigil books are about. They're reminders of, what did I do that time?
A lot of the sigil stuff tends to evolve out of the chaos magic thing. The chaos magic thing was basically created for people that are secular, don't believe in magic, don't believe in religion, don't believe in anything, or wanting to explore for the first time. And that is a great system for people to start with from that environment. But it is as basic as a basic ass bitch, And sigil magic, all you're talking about with sigil magic is the creation and use of a unique symbol or set of symbols. So you create a unique symbol and work with that magically. And you can work with that in many different ways. And there's many different ways of creating that unique symbol. And a lot of people confuse sigil magic with this idea of bolting a load of random crap together, like a circuit. And that's not really what most people think of when it comes to sigil magic. So you deciding to shove an energy there to power this thing. That's circuit creation when it comes to, that's the equivalent of sticking some, I don't know, a plant ally spirit with a contract in your potion or working or stuff like that. You're activating and working with that. You're adding that energy to your work. When it comes to people creating a lot of sigils, they shove stuff like that in, but they don't actually activate it, connect it properly. They haven't got a clue because that's slightly more advanced than basic sigil magic. So people that don't understand basic sigil magic don't start adding and incorporating other symbols into it because you haven't even got a clue how basic sigil magic works, let alone how to contact and add in these other energies. Because I know there are a lot of liars and idiots out there that have told you all you need to do to utilize the spirit of rosemary is to chop it up, dry it out, and roll your bloody magic candle in it. And that's somehow going to utilize the magical correspondent of rosemary. And it won't, you see. it won't. You're doing something physical by putting it on the candle, but you're not linking the energy to it in any way, shape, or form. You know, it is these people.
I kind of want to, and this is probably, you're going to say this is far too nice of me. Anyway, I'm kind of thinking people are going to be going, well, Chris and Liam, you said we didn't understand you, but you haven't actually explained yourself. So I'm going to kind of give an example, and I hope you're going to like it.
Ooh.
And I'm going to use one of your favourite examples, and I'm going to see if you like what I do with it.
Okay.
So, bit of charm magic here, bit of old cunning man bollocks, right? With the abracadabra charm.
How do I make
Now,
abracadabra win lottery, Chris?
So
We've had one
no,
like
I'm not.
that before.
Yeah, those ones. I don't mean that. So what I want to do is explain with and you can go and tell that one after the watershed. What I want to do is just explain what we mean by these idiots that go and find a charm in a book. Then because they think magic a word mean this. So abracadabra charm into a lot of places, along with the cultural idea of abracadabra make something disappear, abracadabra make something come back again. So you actually have that cultural part, the superstition that is in our cultural reference to say this is what an abracadabra charm does, right? What you'll find is lots of witches actually, and you'll read them in a lot of, because I remember reading it in lots of books in my youth that were mostly written by places like Llewellyn and Element, that used to explain the abracadabra charm as a charm that must be made out of lead or wax. These words are charmed, cut into it, and it's a magic and a banishing. And you're like, but not actually explaining how the charm works. So I imagine there are lots of people, and I'm sure if I went on Etsy now, or if I went on Amazon, I could probably find in gold and silver little charms that I could wear around my neck that have the word abracadabra on them, with it disappearing all the way down a little triangle. What they don't seem to recognize is the fact that actually abracadabra, like when there is a sign that says, insert name here, on something, is there as not as a magical word like it's being used, but that actually it's a stand-in to say you insert the bit of knowledge here and then you're going to make it disappear, or vice versa. If you're going to make something grow, which is where lots of people get confused when we start talking about those abracadabras, Liam, is that we can abracadabra something back too. So, there is this kind of idea that I think really demonstrates the point, is something like the abracadabra charm, because I don't think we ever talk about it like this, because
we've done
never
bloody videos on it. We've done numerous videos on it, and they cannot turn around and say it's our second most popular bloody video. And on the Witchcraft Live, it was so popular at one point that I made have you thought about the reverse abracadabra and bringing something back? And that just went, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And then I went a step further and I did the cross, not the cross, the star, where you've got one abracadabra on top of another abracadabra, because as we know, nature abhors a vacuum and you need to get rid of something and replace it with something. So I did two abracadabras over the top of each other, one to remove and one to put back. And a lot of people still don't get that. And that should be perfectly bloody logical. Anyway, thanks for listening. That's the end of the regular edition of the podcast. And if you want the extended edition of this podcast, where we talk about seriously magical stuff, you need to get on the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon. So, goodbye, everyone.